Welcome to an episode of Behind the Scenes, a weekly program unveiling the biggest political developments in Somali politics. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and co-producer here on HORUFADHI Media alongside HORUFADHI. On this week's program, some analysts have been dismayed by the decision taken by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud to disband two critical independent institutions created by the Federal Parliament. The Anti-Corruption Commission and the Judicial Service Commission are both vital for both tackling corruption and developing an independent judicial system. Villa Somalia has argued that the decision stems from the lack of proper constitutional procedure followed to create these institutions. Is this correct, and what could this mean for Somalia's financial and legal transparency? This is the topic on the program today. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel, known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program, and where you can find other exclusive programs such as the African Weekly Roundup and Mahahisal, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into it. On the 9th of October, Villa Somalia released a statement in which it outlined a presidential decree signed by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, effectively disbanding two critical independent institutions created by Parliament, the Anti-Corruption Commission and the Judicial Service Commission, which were both vital for tackling corruption and developing an independent judicial system in a country that has been consistently ranked amongst the most corrupt governments in the world. In a statement, the president highlighted the formation of these independent institutions did not follow the correct legal procedure stipulated by the Somali Provisional Constitution, referring to document XG 504B12021 released by the Upper House of the Federal Parliament of Somalia, which elucidated that the creation of these independent bodies was not voted on by the Upper House of the Federal Parliament. The president ended the statement by ordering his administration to form new independent bodies utilizing Article 71, 109A and 112 of the Somali Provisional Constitution and Article 7 of the law on establishing the Independent Judicial Commission and the appointment of Independent Anti-Corruption Commission. Somalia is at a critical time in its financial and legal journey as it opens its doors to the globe after 30 years of absence. Is the decision to abruptly disband these independent institutions in the interest of Somalia at this current time? Let's take a look at the issue from multiple lenses. We'll begin with the legal element. Is the argument put forth by the presidency strong, and can these independent institutions actually be disbanded by a presidential decree? To assess the legality of the decision and the scope of the Anti-Corruption Commission, we must refer to Somalia's provisional constitution, more specifically Article 111. Now, Article 111 stipulates that the country shall have independent commissions both at the federal government level as well as the level of the federal member states, and the obligations, duties and numbers shall be defined in law passed by the houses of federal parliament. Now, the subsection that specifically deals with the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission is Article 111C, which outlines the mandate, power and scope of the commission. Critically, Article 11C(6), the Constitution reads as follows: the Anti-Corruption Commission shall be independent, impartial, representative and inclusive, and shall have not more than 9 members. Now, if we refer to Article 110 of the Somali Constitution, a vital piece of law that could be a legal question to Villa Somalia's decision is outlined. Now, Article 110 subsection 3 states, an independent commission must not be subject to the direction or control of any person or institution. It clearly is worded here in the Constitution that once formed, the independent institutions cannot be subject to interference by any person or institution within the Somali federal government, including the presidency. However, the main point raised by Villa Somalia is that the formation of these independent institutions did not follow the correct procedure in regard to the Upper House of Parliament. To test the legal basis of this argument, we must look at Article 17 of the Constitution, which outlines the legislative powers of the Upper House of the Federal Parliament. Interestingly, if we look at Article 7(1) subsection I, we see the Upper House participation in the process of appointing the fellow members of the government institution as provided by the Constitution. Now, while it does state the role of the Upper House in regards to the Judicial Service Commission under subsection I, however, it fails to mention the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission. In other words, the Upper House's approval for the members of the Commission, Anti-Corruption Commission that is, was not a constitutional requirement as argued by the Speaker of the Upper House. The reality is that Somalia's government, like other presidential systems, is divided into 3 branches, which must remain separate from one another. This is the executive, comprising of the presidency and the government, the legislative, comprising of the federal parliament, and the judicial, comprising of the judicial systems, including the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission. Consequently, Does the decision by the president not only contradict the constitution, but also infringe upon the independency of the Judicial Commission? Well, it seems so. However, the matter of fact is that Somalia's constitution remains provisional and underdeveloped. It still has a lot of legal loopholes and issues that need to rectify, including the dismissal of independent commissions, despite the independence of government institutions, including the presidency. As Parliament approved these organizations and commissions, surely it ought to be Parliament that dismisses them in a vote of no confidence, rather than a political team of advisors and the president with vested political interests at heart. That is for legal experts to decide. And what makes matters more interesting is that the president, as an opposition politician, opposed and did not recognize the upper house legislative powers at that time. Now, another element we must assess is the critical period Somalia is currently in. Now, the Somali government has taken a number of big financial decisions that could have a dramatic impact on Somalia's frail and limited financial laws and regulations. Therefore, meticulous and continuous analysis and assessment of Somalia's financial world is essential for independent institutions and regulations. Let's take a look at the Somali Central Bank's authorization and granting licenses to two major foreign banks to operate in Somalia. This is a process that has been clogged in the regulatory pipelines for many years. For instance, Bank Masar previously requested licensing in Somalia, only to be rejected by the Somali government at that time, led by former President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, citing security concerns. The reality is that Somalia lacks the basic regulatory framework to provide the necessary oversight to not only ensure the banks are engaging accordingly, but also to protect its own financial systems and consumers. For example, Somalia does not have a law that outlines the legal basis for licensing banks. The current Financial Institution Law 130 is very old and is inadequate in the contemporary financial world. For instance, it does not outline the scopes of legal accountability and risk transfer ownership. It does not outline the ability of the central bank to act as a regulator with defined powers. This means that the Central Bank of Somalia would not have the legal power to regulate foreign banks in Somalia adequately. For instance, the central bank cannot assess a bank's business model to mitigate possible impacts. There are no regulatory requirements on publishing of a bank's capital and liquidity, and there's literally no definition or assessment of risk-weighted assets, among other things. Consequently, all these loopholes and inadequacies allow the thriving and flourishing of corrupt activities, including international deals and embezzlement of public funds by rogue individuals. As a result, the necessity of an independent anti-corruption commission that is independent from all government institutions and is accountable only to Parliament is vital to maintain Somalia's financial credibility and trust during such a critical period of development, and this is on the international stage, particularly as Somalia is seeking debt relief and is on a debt relief program. We can also look at recent petroleum deals discussions, with the Federal Joint Ministerial Committee on Petroleum Deals passing a new procurement agreement framework last month. This is despite the Puntland state government rejecting tendering procurement proposals put forth by the newly appointed Committee on Contractual Procurement set up by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. We have seen during the latter period of President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo's caretaker government, in which Federal Minister for Petroleum and Mineral Resources Abdurrashid Mohammed Ahmed announcing an agreement with an American upstream oil and gas exploration and production company called Coastline Exploration Limited without parliamentary approval. In separate statements, for instance, President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo and the then caretaker Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble rejected the deal, declaring it null and void. And this is a prime example of possible illegal international deals being done by ministers when there's a lack or a limited accountability. For instance, during this period, Somalia's government technically legal period was finished, and this was a caretaker government, and this created many loopholes. Now, the signing of any deals while federal member states remain opposed and with limited scrutiny from any independent commission, such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, opens the Pandora box to possible shady dealings, among other things. The reality is that Somalia has been ranked amongst the most corrupt countries in the world. The incumbent president Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and members of his political group have been accused of corruption by various groups during his first presidential term between 2012 and 2016. It was in 2015 when 93 members of the House of the People, the lower house of the federal parliament, filed a motion to dismiss the president due to abuse of power involving corruption. International donors at that time complained about Mohamud's cash-strapped government not doing enough to fight graft and say the theft of scarce government resources had frustrated efforts to build a functioning government during that period. A 2013 corruption scandal involving the repatriation of overseas Somali state assets frozen at the outset of the civil war in 1991 further strained his relationship with international donors during that time, but President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and those close to him during that period denied any wrongdoings. Now, an independent anti-corruption commission has been praised by various international organizations, including the UN, for fighting corruption in Somalia. Just last month, members of the committee completed high-level training in Turkey needed for investigations, among other things. See, the Anti-Corruption Commission was a skilled and important body that oversaw a government that requires the most oversight during a critical period in Somalia's financial journey. It would be difficult to replace such skilled and experienced staff at such a vital time. And many are asking why the Somali government has not already put forward a list of members to replace the old. And this must be at the top of the government's agenda at this current time.